Do you know that in Indonesia, 1 out of 10 married female are married before their 20s? Yes, mate, that is the fact. 1 out of 10 married female in Indonesia are married before their 20. And yes, you maybe will be the one if you are not taking care. But by the way, why these people married before their 20s? Of course, there is an answer for that, but how do we know it? Do we ask people one by one?
Hey, why are you pregnant? Married before 20s. I'm pregnant, so I'm married. Okay. What about you? I'm also pregnant. Okay. There is no one who married not because of pregnant. You. I'm a man, bro.
Of course, we are not asking the entire Indonesian one by one because there are 10,000 female in Indonesia. It would take a lot of time, money, and energy. So, how do you know the answer about why they married before 20? The answer is simple. You take a sample. But what is sample? A sample is a portion or part of the population of interest. Let me make it simple. For an example, if you have 100 people to analyze and you want to know how much from 100 people like to eat ice cream with pepper, you then take a sample. Like for an example, you take only 10% to answer the question. So, instead of asking one by one 100 of people, you choose only 10 from them to answer the question. That is what I meant by sample. You take some people from a population. There are several reasons why you better take sample rather than analyzing the whole population. The first one is to save the time. To contact the whole population would be time-consuming. For an example, a candidate for a national office may wish to determine her chance for election. A sample poll using the regular staff and field interviews of a professional polling firm would take only 1 or 2 days. Using the same staff and interviewers and working 7 days a week, it would take nearly 200 years to contact all the voting population. You may be already dead before your results comes out. The second reason why we better take sample is the cost of studying all the items in a population may be prohibitive. Public opinion polls, consumer testing organizations such as Harris International, CBS News Polls, and Zogby International usually contact fewer than 2,000 of the nearly 60 million families in the United States. One consumer panel type organization charges about $40,000 to mail samples and tabulate responses in order to test a product, such as breakfast cereal, cat food, or perfume. The same product test using all 60 million families would cost about $1 billion. Third reason why we better take sample is the physical impossibility of checking all items in the population. For example, how do you know the bacterial level of Toba Lake? Do you take all of its water to come into your laboratory? No, of course. You take sample because some of the study somehow is very impossible to check all of the items, so you need to take sample. And the last reason why we better take sample is the destructive nature of some tests. Suppose that we need to study about the quality of the wine in factory. How do you test the quality of the wine in a factory? Do you drink all of them? Hey, I just drink all of the wine to check its quality. No, you take sample of it. By the way, there are also several types of sampling method that we can use. The first one is simple random sampling. What does it mean by this first method? Simple random sampling is a method that's used to take a sample randomly. The focus of this method is to give all the population with the same probability. So, let we see the steps with examples on it. The first step of using this method is we need to know how much are the population. For example, suppose you want to know about the opinions of all employees in Istana Kepresidenan Indonesia about their works. To study this, suppose we use simple random sampling method. And the first step of this method is we need to know how much the population that we want to study. According to CNN Indonesia, the employees in the Indonesia Presidential President or Istana Kepresidenan are 70 people. So these 70 people are the population of this research. Step 2. After knowing how much the population, we then consider how much sample we need to use. Do we use half of it, 1/4 of population, or how much? Suppose after discussing with the research team, we then need 10 samples to be interviewed. So, after choosing how much the samples, here comes to the method. Step 3. Considering the way to pick samples randomly. Indeed, there are several ways to do this, but here I just want to give an example of how do we sampling the population with simple random sampling. After knowing that we have 70 population and need 10 samples, we write their name into paper. After write their name into a piece of paper, we then put them into the box or bowl. Mix all of the names and then randomly pick it up without seeing at it. Do this 10 times, then tada! We got the samples. That is the way we sampling the population with simple random sampling method. Something important that you need to know is this kind of method is giving all the population the same probability to be chosen. In this case, all of the employees have 1/7 chance to be chosen. So, if the method isn't giving the same chance to all the population, then you might are not using the simple random sampling method. The next one is systematic random sampling. In some case of study, we somehow can use the first method, which is simple random sampling, to use as a method to sample population. For example, suppose that you want to study a population around 13,100 in concert of Jakarta Symphony Orchestra that held in Monas. You want to study about how do they get into the concert. Do they ride by a car using Grab or Gojek, ride with a friend, family, or what? Using the first method is nearly impossible. Like, how do we write all of their name into a piece of paper? Or maybe Excel? How do we write it? Of course, it would take a lot of time. So, this second method of systematic random sampling will give you the solution. With the case before, you have 13,100 people in a concert that sit on a line and you need 100 of them to become samples. So, how do we sample this with systematic random sampling? The first step of using this method is we pick randomly, for instance, using the random number application to pick the first sample. So you need to pick the first sample before doing further. Let's say you use an application and it shows the number of 21. So this number of 21 will be the start of picking the other numbers. Just keep in mind this number of 21. The second step after we have the number is we need to divide the population over the sample to get the next number. In this case, we have 13,100 population over 100 samples. What do we get is 131. And this number will be added to the 21, the number we got before. The third step, after we get the number of population over sample, which is 131, we then add this number to the first number, which is 21. So the result will be like this. The first sample is sitting on number 21 on the line. The next one is 21 plus 131, which is 152. So the second sample is sitting on the line number 152. Then 152 plus 131, which is 283, and so on until we get 100 samples. This is the second method of sampling. It is called systematic random sampling. The next method is stratified random sampling. What does it mean by stratified random sampling? This sampling is a method to study a population that have strata, like juniors, seniors, government people, parents, kids, and much more. The first step of this sampling method is we divide the population into subpopulation or strata. Suppose we have the population of a student in management program in Unsrat, and we need to know about their opinions on the university. Of course, we will have different opinions from juniors to the seniors. So because of that, we need to divide the population into subpopulation. Look at this data. After knowing the data, we classify the number of the seniors and juniors into the subpopulation. We divide the batch 2015 until the batch 2021. The second step is we take randomly over each subpopulation using the random sampling method. For instance, if we need to take 10 people out of the subpopulation, then we take 10 from the batch 2015, 10 from the 2016, and so on until the batch of 2021. And that is how we do the stratified random sampling. The last method of sampling is cluster sampling method. What is cluster sampling? Cluster sampling is a method to find sample by dividing the population into clusters using naturally occurring geographic or other boundaries. Then clusters are randomly selected and a sample is collected by randomly selecting from each cluster. Suppose you want to know about the satisfaction of Indonesian people of their government. To study and contact personally each of Indonesian member are time-consuming. So instead of contacting all the population, we divide the population into subpopulation based on political region. So the first step of this method is we divide the population into subpopulation. In this case, we can divide the population of Indonesia into 34 subpopulation, which is all of them are representing the province in Indonesia. Step 2. After we divide the population into subpopulation, then we pick the amount of sample that will represent the subpopulation. For example, we take 25 people of each subpopulation, then after that, we will have 25 multiplied by 31, which is 850 samples that we can get by clustering sampling method. So, in summary, we have learned about first, what is sample, second, why we sample, and the third is method of sampling. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you have questions, just write your question down below. And of course, please subscribe, like, and share to your other friends that maybe need to study about this. Cheerio!